Hey everyone, Chris Nelson with Tandem Fly Outfitters. Today is Thursday, September the 6th. Current lake level is 864, down 3 feet from 867, stable from last week. Current temperatures are, start out temperature is 78 to 80 degrees, afternoon temperature 80 to 82. Starting to see it cool off a little bit and stay a little bit cooler, not seeing those spikes up into that 84, 85 degrees on the sunnier days. Water clarity still good. I think after the rain this week we'll start to see the tributaries push some cloudier water in, but that won't affect fishing at all. We're going to talk about largemouth. The largemouth right now are really starting to move around. They're coming off the main lake brush piles, and this is just going to progress and progress as we get further into the fall. But I've noticed this week a big change, and I don't know if it is directly related to the overcast skies that we've had in the past week, and also coming off of a holiday weekend with a lot of boat traffic, a lot of jet skis, tubes, and boats just running right over the top of those brush piles. But I've noticed those bass have really started to move. They've started to set up closer to the mouth of the creek arms and in the creek arms. We're going to start finding over the next couple weeks those fish really start to change their habits. The fish that were on the main lake brush piles related to current, related to that cooler, comfortable water, are going to make that transition to the mouth of the creeks. Maybe not all the way in the back, but they're going to start to get set up on brush in the mouth of the creeks, and then it'll progress over the next couple weeks. I'd look for bass in the 15 to 18 foot range, still around brush, but start to look in the creek arms more. The baits that I want to highlight for this time of year is number one bait I always have tied on is a peanut butter and jelly jig. My preferred jig is a jacked KP Power Finesse jig, and a peanut butter and jelly with a green pumpkin trailer off the back of it. Chompers twin tail grub or a Berkeley trigger crawl are my favorite. Next bait, Whopper Popper 75. It puts off a lot of sound, a little bit bigger profile than the 90, but still get a lot of bites on it versus the 110. I feel like if you're going to throw the 110, you got to be just chasing a big bite. Next bait, a 2.5. Since they're not really set up super shallow, 2.5 will still get down there around that brush and deflect off the brush in the creek arms for the fish that are starting to get shallower. And then for your visual brush piles, because there's several throughout the lake that are sticking out of the water right now, that are in 5 to 12 foot of water. Some of the ones in 12 foot of water, you can see the tops of them. I would be throwing a buzz bait around it and pulling it right through the top of it. Those are the key baits that I've got this week for bass fishing. You're still going to find them on a 10-inch worm and a jig on main lake brush, but that bite is going to crumble quickly. Notice the same thing with the crappie bite. The main lake brush piles that I ran in the weeks past, this week a lot of them I went to and those crappie weren't there. There was a couple brush piles that I've hit religiously for the past 2 months that they just vanished off of. So it's definitely a telltale sign they're moving around a little bit. Like I said before about the bass, it could have something to do with the boat traffic over the weekend, but I really feel like they're starting to make their move. start to look for them in the same areas as the bass. They're going to start to set up in the mouth of the creek arms. Finding more crappie suspended out away from the brush. Talked about it a little bit last week, but those brush piles that have consistently had fish that were in the 22 to 25 foot range, those fish have disappeared, and they didn't go too far. They're a little bit further out from the brush, on the ditch side or the channel side of wherever the brush was, and they're suspending in 22 feet of water. And those open water fish, it seems like you have such a short window when you're going over the top of them, that instead of trying to get a lighter jig head with a shiner on there, you're better off dropping a jig down. My go-to this week has been the bonehead salt and pepper. And on the open water fish, when you're not in the brush, these new jack jig heads with a screw lock are a must-have. I mean, they'll save you a ton of baits. The brush pile that I'm hitting still, I'm finding the crappie being a little bit shallower, 16, 18 foot of water. Talked about this smaller hook on this 16th ounce jig head last week just a little bit. I nose hook a shiner, drop it straight down into the brush and work it up through there. The crappie will tell you at what depth in the brush pile they are, based on what you can see visually on your graph, and when you drop all the way to the bottom through the brush, whether they're one crank off the bottom or 4 cranks off the bottom, or they're suspended right on top of the brush. The walleye, you can still catch them on the flats with 2 ounce bottom bouncer, worm harness with a slow death hook. I'd encourage modifying your worm harnesses, putting an inline swivel and putting a slow death hook on there. Use a whole night crawler or a half night crawler. But what we're going to see really get good over the next couple weeks, when these walleye do push into the creeks, we'll find a lot of them on main lake points. And when they get set up this time of year, just a 1/8 ounce jig head with some type of wire keeper so your night crawler won't come off whenever you cast. Working that anywhere from 12 to 18 foot of water on all main lake points, preferably around the mouth of a creek. You'll working it slow, just bouncing it off the bottom. And sometimes they like a long pull, let it fall, long pull, let it fall, cadence. But the jig and worm is really going to excel over the bottom bouncers in the upcoming weeks. The white bass we're starting to see those big schools that we've been seeing crumble a little bit. I think the boat traffic running over them all weekend long, we had a long holiday weekend, really scattered those schools, scattered the bait fish out. You're starting to see more small pods of white bass. There still are some large schools of them out there, but it definitely wasn't the bite we had last week. You can find them if you look hard, but another obstacle we've had after last week's fishing report and then the holiday weekend and this week is we've had a lot of wind, and they don't like to come up in the wind. So what I've been doing to make sure my customers are getting on fish, I will go in the areas that I know that they have been in, and you might go to 3 or 4 areas and not see anything, but once you start seeing the bait fish and you start seeing those schools of whites, you can take just a 1/2 ounce spoon. I've been using just a 1/2 ounce silver cotton cordell and on 12-pound braid. And when those fish are down deeper and they're not coming to the surface, pay attention to them on their graph. When they're on closer to the bottom and related to the bottom, they'll still eat. They're just not actively blowing up on schools. And if you'll throw out there, let it fall to the bottom, rip it up once, let it fall to the bottom, rip it up again, and then after you rip it up the second time, just a medium to fast retrieve back with a spoon. That seems to be what's really been triggering those fish that are related to the bottom and not coming up. The other thing I talked about last week, when the fish are scattered like they are, the best thing to do is take a 1/4 ounce rooster tail and just troll around, and you will catch some white bass just trolling the rooster tail around because they're scattered, they're up feeding, you're covering a lot of water, and it's a super simple bait to fish. I think we've covered everything as far as all the species of fish.
Yeah, alright, just say thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate a like on the video or whatever. What's something that I missed that you want to know about? You know what I mean? Ask a question.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys want to know about? Let us know in the comments and we'll include it in the next week. That's it for me. I'm going fishing.
Hey, thank y'all for tuning in this week. Would appreciate a like on the video. If there's anything I missed or didn't cover for you, feel free to comment on Facebook and let us know. I've got an afternoon trip waiting outside right now, so I've got to go. Tight lines to y'all, and have a good week.